meeting of Folsom Cordova Unified School District Board of Education, April 23rd. Board Member Reed, would you be so kind to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Let me stand here. All right. Please stand and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir.
Let me just bring up the agenda.
All right. Superintendent, if you can call roll, please.
Yes. Good evening, Board Member Clark.
Here.
Board Member Short.
Here.
Board Member Reed.
Here.
Board Member Hoover.
Here.
Board Member Ranking.
Here.
And Student Board Member Nisnik.
Here.
Thank you. All are accounted for.
Thank you. Just for the public, a broadcast and recording is being made at the direction of the board, and the broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. The governor has declared a state of emergency to exist in California as a result of the threat of COVID-19. The governor issued Executive Order N-25-20, which directs Californians to follow public health directives, including canceling large gatherings. The executive order also allows local legislative bodies to hold meetings via conference calls while still satisfying state temporary requirements. The governor has also issued an executive order N-33-20, prohibiting people from leaving their homes or places of residence except to access necessary supplies and services or to engage in specified critical infrastructure employment. In response to COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N-29-20, which temporarily suspends provisions of the Brown Act relating to public meetings. As such, Folsom Cordova Unified School District board members will be conducting open session board meetings via Zoom, video, teleconferencing. The meetings will also be live streamed on the district's YouTube channel. The public's health and well-being are a top priority for the Board of Trustees of Folsom Cordova Unified School District, and you are urged to take all appropriate health safety precautions. We thank you for joining us on our first Zoom board meeting. We appreciate your patience as we learn to work in this new environment. So with that being said, reporting out of closed session.
No action was taken.
Thank you. Adoption of agenda.
Move it.
Second.
I will recognize Board Member Hoover as a second. Moved by Mr. Short, second by Board Member Hoover. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Can we do a roll call vote on that?
Absolutely.
Okay, roll call. Board Member Clark.
Yes.
Board Member Short.
Aye.
Board Member Reed.
Aye.
Board Member Ranking.
Yes.
Board Member Hoover.
Aye.
Student Board Member.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to public participation. And I'll just add on that time will be given to speakers in the discretion of the board chairperson. The law allows the public to address the board on any matter not on the agenda, but the law prohibits any action by the board on non-agenda items. So who do we have?
At this time, we don't have any raised hands, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. We'll move on to reports.
I think we do have a comment that was submitted on the Google form, though, that Ms. Griffin will read.
All right.
Angela Griffin, are you there to be able to read the public comment that was submitted?
I don't actually see her in the participant list.
Is she not in?
No, I don't see her either.
Okay.
I will text her. Can we come back to
Absolutely.
that comment?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's move on to item 8, reports of district organizations.
Student Advisory Board, Ms. Nisnik.
Awesome. So last week, I was able to set up a committee that will focus on creating a virtual online talent show. So we are working out all the details currently, but we really want to still showcase our talent and to have the entire district see it too. We're preparing for our elections for a new president, and that will take place in May. And I'm also in constant communication with several of the members from SAB, and I'm gathering their feedback on how Schoology is going and any other concerns, thoughts that they're having during this process and distance learning.
Thank you, Board Member Scarlett. California School Employees Association.
And Mr. Ogden has a statement he's going to read on behalf of Rob Thomas, President of CSE. Mr. Ogden.
CSEA appreciates the district's commitment to the health, welfare, and safety of all staff. We're going through many changes in the way we serve our students, families, and each other. Your classified staff is committed to meeting those challenges as we move forward together.
Thank you. Folsom Cordova Education Association.
Mr. Ogden's also going to read the statement from Ms. Nicholas, President of FCUSD.
In the midst of these challenging times, I'm grateful for the relationship that FCEA has with FCUSD. We have been able to work through difficulties and messaging together. In addition to our initial MOU, we are working on an addendum to help guide grading practices. I know we are unified in wanting the best for our staff and students, and it is the desire that guides our actions each day. Our teachers are resilient and adjust their sails each day. I love seeing the different ways they are working with their students and the variety of meaningful experiences they are providing. In our current environment, learning is more about the journey than the destination.
All right, Folsom Cordova Leadership Association.
Ms. Cabrera.
No report.
Thank you, Ms. Cabrera. District English Learner Advisory Committee.
Also no report.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Clark, Ms.
Yes.
Griffin's back in if you want to go back to public participation.
We can go back to public participation.
All right, thank you, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. Maureen Lawrence submitted. It is my understanding that the board is still considering whether to offer the choice of credit, no credit, or letter grades to our students. As a parent of a Vista Del Lago High School sophomore who has not benefited from the 4x4 block system schedule, it is very important to us that he has the option for letter grades for this term. I request that this option be given to FCUSD students and parents, just as many other schools in the area and state are doing. Not allowing our students this choice can be a huge disservice to our students. We appreciate your thoughtful consideration. That is the only written comment for this section of our agenda.
Thank you. All right, agenda consent.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Hoover, second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, could you call roll, please?
Sure. Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Short.
Aye.
Board Member Reed.
Aye.
Board Member Hoover.
Aye.
Board Member Ranking.
Aye.
And Student Board Member Nisning.
Hi.
Awesome. All right. We will head into discussion action item. 10, Resolution 0423-20-41, resolution to cure and correct and unconditionally commit to ceasing challenge action. Dr. Collegian?
Yes, coming before the board tonight is a resolution to, as the district has received a demand to cure and correct and cease and desist with respect to a number of alleged Brown Act violations in connection with following prior actions from closed session meetings on February 13th, February 27th, open session on March 12th, and open session on March 26th. So the remedy to that is to pass the resolution that's in front of the board, include all the attachments of where the demands have come from, which are included with this item this evening, and our commitment as a board to hear and correct and unconditionally commit to ceasing challenged action.
Thank you. It does look like we have a comment from the public. Scott Rafferty.
Unmuted. Oh, hello. Yes, I just want to express my appreciation to taking this very seriously. But I see that your commitment to move forward appears to be very genuine, and my client just wants to be a good partner. So we regard this as sort of a resolved issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Seeing none, I'll go to the board. Any comments from the board? Seeing none, we will entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
I had a simultaneous second there. Moved by Ms. Rankin, second by who?
Me, Ed.
Second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, call roll.
Yes. Board Member Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Short?
Aye.
Board Member Reed?
Aye.
Board Member Hoover?
Aye.
Board Member Ranking?
Aye.
Student Member Nisnik?
Aye.
All right. Looks like that motion carries. Thank you so much. All right. We're going to close our open session and go into public hearing. Public hearing item 11A, pursuant to Elections Code Section 10010, the public is invited to provide input regarding the composition of districts. The district intends to establish for board member elections before drawing a draft map or maps of the proposed boundaries of the district. Superintendent Collegian?
Yes, at this point in time, as part of our process in moving to the trustee areas, we are at the point of looking at our draft maps and have a presentation from Dr. Levitt from National Demographics Corporation. So we have a PowerPoint that I believe we're going to bring up so he can share what the criteria are that we're looking at for the maps.
Superintendent, this is Paul Gant checking in just briefly. Can I clarify? I believe that tonight's hearing is the third of 6 hearings, and that we are not yet at the stage of reviewing draft maps, but we are having public discussion. And there will be one further hearing where, again, there will be public discussion before the first hearing where there will be actually draft maps to review.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
All right, thank you.
This is Dr. Justin Levitt with National Demographics. Good evening to everyone, President Clark, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be with you here tonight. I'm filling in for Doug Johnson today, and he sends his regrets for not able to present this himself. But we are working on this together, and I'm happy to be here tonight for, as we just mentioned, our third of 6 public hearings on this issue. So I have a short presentation. For those of you who have heard this before, we're just kind of going through some of the basics of districting, how the process works, and some of the factors that we will consider. At this point, we are not presenting any draft maps. This is really just for the purposes of illustrating the considerations that go into districting. And today we'll be hearing feedback or testimony on what factors and particularly communities of interest the public wishes to consider as part of the districting process. When it comes to districting, we look at two general sorts of rules. The federal laws are things that the Supreme Court and other courts have said that we must follow. At the top, equal population is the requirement that districts have the same number of total residents. Now, what we're looking at doing here, same as the state of California is going to be doing in 2020, is reallocating or removing the prison population from the district so that it doesn't include that, substantial number of people who are not eligible to vote, who otherwise would make up a substantial portion of a trustee area. But otherwise, we are using the latest census data we have, the 2010 census, to equalize same number of total residents across each of the 5 trustee areas. In addition, we had considered the Federal Voting Rights Act, which says that we have to look at whether or not we have protected class populations, groups that have historically faced barriers or discrimination to registration and voting, or difficulty obtaining materials in languages other than English. While race cannot be the only factor or the predominant factor, racial gerrymandering or gerrymandering, depending on how you want to pronounce it, is not allowed. Race can and may be one of the other factors that ties into the Federal Vote Act through the protected class designations for groups like African Americans and Latinos as a language minority group. In addition, on the right-hand column are other factors that the courts have recognized that you can consider as part of the process. I'll talk more about communities of interest here in a second, so I'll come back to that one. Compactness and contiguity are about the shape of the district. Contiguity is the idea that you have to be able to drive or walk from one part of the district to every other part of the district without leaving it. You can't have a little bit here at the north end of Folsom and then another little bit at the west end of Rancho Cordova. Compactness is the idea that you shouldn't bypass other populations in order to create a district. Following visible boundaries, both natural and man-made, is the idea that it should be easier for residents to tell which trustee area they ultimately live in at the end of the day. The courts have also recognized that the decision of whether or not a member should continue in office is a principle that can be protected. Respecting the voters' choices rather than using the districting process as a way of intentionally targeting a particular board member. And the last criteria, we know that planned future growth is something that, we're doing another census this year. We're not speculating in this particular process on where there has been growth since 2010, but when come the new process next year, you'll be able to look not only at the growth over the last 10 years, but also looking forward to the next decade in terms of what is planned. So again, it's not something we're considering here, but it's something that may be considered looking forward, especially in 2021. And that's a really key point that I want to make as I jump into this. We are going to be looking at doing this for the 2020 election, but in 2021, we will get new census data, and the state requires that the lines be looked at again. It's quite possible that the district will have to redraw its lines. And so remember, keep in mind that this districting will only be used for the 2020 election. So jumping into some of the demographics, as you can see here, one of the things we want to provide you is as much detail as possible. Looking at, we don't just have racial information here, we also have information on language spoken at home, on age, on education, on income, on single family and multifamily households. And we're happy to make all of this data available as much as possible to anyone interested in the community. One of the things we see here, the total population of the district, excluding Folsom Prison, is 115,000 people, give or take, which means that each of the 5 trustee areas will have approximately 23,100 residents. And so that's kind of one of the big key takeaway numbers. We have to make sure each trustee area is about 23,100 residents. Looking into the Voting Rights Act analysis, we see that we don't see a lot of a concentration of Latinos anywhere within the district. All of the areas in purple and blue are under 25 and 35% Latino. The areas in red, maybe if you're on a big screen like I am, you can kind of see some of the little tiny red dots in the map. Those blocks actually have a total of 6 people between them. There's no areas where we see on the map that Latinos really make up over 75, over 65% of the population. The same is true looking at the African American share of the population. We see slightly higher numbers, percentages in the Rancho Cordova area, especially kind of around the railroad, around US 50, but not necessarily anywhere where African Americans make up more than 35% of the population. Similarly, with Asian Americans, we do see a little bit more of a concentration, particularly on the eastern end of the district, along US 50 at the east end of Folsom. And we have areas in green and orange here, or yellow here, where Asian Americans make up between 50 and 65%, or 50 and 75%. And so we see that kind of along Interstate 50 in Folsom. Now, when we talk about communities of interest, we really have 2 questions we want to ask here. The first is, what is your community of interest or your neighborhood? Where do you consider the areas that have shared interests, shared views, shared problems, shared characteristics? There's a lot of different ways of defining this. Some of the ones that often frequently come up in school districts include the attendance areas. Particularly the elementary school attendance areas. That always is the biggest one because that's where, that's where families are most invested in their local community. But it could include middle school and high school attendance areas as well. We're also looking at neighborhoods. Where do we see natural dividing lines, such as highways, major roads, rivers, canals, and so forth? Where do we see things that bring people together rather than divide them? Such as parks or neighborhood or other overlapping electoral jurisdictions like shared city or shared community. And of course, shared demographic characteristics. Where do we see more homeowners? Where do we see more renters and things like that? And the second question we also want to ask here is, does a community of interest want to be united in one district or to be divided to have a voice in multiple districts? Especially when it comes to attendance areas, although I'll say it's not the only one, we have seen times where communities have come forward to say, we're actually better served if we have a stake in 2 districts rather than 1. And certainly for purposes like unifying different neighborhoods or different communities across the district, this is a question we want to pose in these opening hearings so that we get some interest or feedback from people on how we should implement communities of interest once lines are put on the map. In particular, one of the things we're looking at is attendance areas. I'll note that these are the current PDFs we have. I think they include a couple of schools that are not quite open yet, but these are something that we are taking into consideration. I think the elementary school areas are more or less the same as they are currently. I know I've seen a couple of different high school assignment maps depending on which year they were published. So we're looking at the attendance areas in particular. Something how much do we focus on them, keeping them together? One other note is I will note that some of the block divisions, some of the lines where the census block lines are, the smallest unit of geography we use, are not where the attendance areas are, especially within the city of Folsom. There's a lot of very large communities that are broken up into more than one elementary area, but there's no block division or there's no block line there. So we want to feedback, especially on which particular elementary school communities have a sense of needing to stay together. If there are ones that have a sense of we really need to keep this elementary divided or have more than one representative serving it. Just to give you a sense of some real world examples here, Glendora Unified and Glendale Unified both look at more compact or cluster-based maps, equal population without strange or without nooks and jogs. And then we have multi-representative maps such as Redwood City and Central Unified, that looked at combining different neighborhoods, or in Central Unified's case, across a rural versus urban divide. The more each district contains a little bit of the rural community and a little bit of the suburban areas in Fresno. And so tonight's public hearing is just like the first two. We have not drawn any maps, and we want to hear your testimony and your feedback on where they should be. We're happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. Appreciate it. All right, before we go to the board, I will go to the public. Any comments from the public?
We have some, there we go. I have my video. We have written comments. I can read those now.
Okay.
All right, the first one is submitted by L.J. Laurent. Question: it is not California law such public notices must appear and circulated at least 2 weeks prior to action. Does California have a different public notice requirement for school districting for elections? It is rewarding to see FCUSD is beginning an attempt to comply with state law respecting differences between public interests and different city areas and respect for voters' right laws. However, question of prior notice of public hearing is a concern. With respect to public notice in SACB today, show below. It is our hope FCUSD will district for board elections in a manner which recognizes existing city of Folsom north of Highway 50 versus Folsom Plan area south of Highway 50, FPA. Water Boards has told Folsom in a formal engineer's letter that the city, with respect to water rights, is two distinct parts, excuse me. Mainly, this is due to the city's own LAFCO annexation conditions of annexation with respect to water. Further, city voters passed Measure Water, now part of city charter, which directly distinguishes between existing city and FPA S50. Naturally, FCUSD will be as impacted as every other person, agency, business with respect to the legal distinction between N50 and S50. State legislation has become more rigorous because of this city, and we hope school district will recognize that N50 and S50 Folsom are not the same legally with respect to water law compliance. Since the state of California water boards have made such distinctions regarding water with respect to Folsom, California, this might impact district decisions. However, with respect to development, S50 City of Folsom has very divergent interests from existing city, both with respect to funding, construction of infrastructure, and necessity to provide a proven legal water source consistent with the state's view of Folsom water supply, particularly as we appear to be in drought again. Still, my concern is that FCUSD recognize the differences between existing Folsom City N50 and those stated in Folsom City laws and city charter. Folsom created this problem for you, not residents who agreed with Measure W passage. A new water source is mandatory for all S50. FYI, this is critical because we have located and submitted to water boards evidence that Folsom intends to use it rather than limited water rights to also stretch that limited water for about 7,000 acres of Aerojet owned vacant land, which is currently under development in Sac County. Concern: if water boards stop Folsom from exceeding its water rights despite the quiet granting to these areas, FCUSD will be impacted since you cannot service new school construction to which City of Folsom has no legal rights, and to areas which are outside the city limits, but in development considerations. FCUSD School Board needs to be aware of the precariousness of S50 water supplies. FYI, bond issuance for FPA S50 land actually contain wording which labels water boards warning to Folsom as a substantial risk to their money invested in these bonds. This is as real as it gets in our opinion. If the entire FCUSD board wishes to see voluminous documents in my research reports, They are public record and readily available from water boards. We have 2 more comments that were submitted, written comments. The next is from Carolina Flores. I worked for Sac County for 20 years. I am retired, but active in the community countywide as an advocate and activist for children and family rights. During my 20 years, I worked with foster children, mostly with Cordova High School. I worked with poverty households and community marginalized by law in voter eligibility and being economically disadvantaged. This correlates with factors evident in their ethnicity, language, poverty, lack of educational attainment, housing, and food instability. The needs of these special needs children in these cases needs to be fully understood when the board makes tough choices by district elections will serve to empower these communities with equal representation on the school board, provide direct communication to these impoverished neighborhoods, and help extend the voting rights and language rights of all communities in Folsom Cordova District. Having representation with the school board, parents and families can begin to develop an infrastructure that allows all children to easily transition from Folsom Cordova schools into institutes of higher education. There can be no future educational attainment without the full engagement of all parents and special needs communities. Resources must be equally distributed to all schools, and school budgeting must address the needs of all the community directly. Thank you for supporting by-district elections in Folsom Cordova School District. Carolina E. Flores, MSW. We have a third written submitted comment. No name, designation parent. I am concerned that the board will become even more Folsom balanced as we currently have 3 board members that live in the Folsom area. I would appreciate more people looking into the Rancho Cordova side of our district that has the most need. It's frustrating when we spend half a board meeting on Vista del Lago boundaries, yet the Rancho Cordova middle schools have programs cut. I think that was the last written public comment.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
Mr. Clark, before we proceed, Mr. Rafferty has his hand raised.
Oh, I didn't see his hand up. Mr. Rafferty?
Hello. I'll make this very brief. Ms. Flores is a tough act to follow. She speaks with a great deal of authority and makes a very powerful case. I also want to emphasize, and I agree with most everything that Dr. Levitt just recited. The standard for school boards is a little more relaxed than for cities in terms of drawing the lines. And I think we should all be candid that the racial data is not that good, and it's not going to get appreciably better after the census. And race shouldn't be the driving factor. It's more looking holistically at who is disempowered, and that correlates very highly with race, but it also includes other parts of the community, and it doesn't necessarily require attending to those segments of protected groups that are already very active and well represented, and their geographic communities. So the other important issue that was raised by the last written comment, which I did see and try to respond to, is that there's a huge part of the district that is currently almost completely unpopulated. And that may change, but you have to be very cautious about projecting, even next year, projecting what's going to happen in the next 10 years. The Rio de Oro specific plan, when it was first written in 2010, said that the population of Rancho Cordova was going to be 300,000 in the year 2030. I don't think it's quite on that trajectory, and it wouldn't be appropriate to assume that much population will be there when it, especially in times of economic uncertainty that's kind of disfavored in the Ninth Circuit. So subject to that, I think this is a great start. As I said earlier, this is more of a tutorial from Dr. Levitt to the public. So I think the meeting will be watched by many people who aren't quite sure yet what to say, but you'll hear from them in subsequent hearings, especially when there's their maps to react to. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rafferty. I will move forward and ask the board for their comments. Mr. Reed?
Yes. Well, I think I'm going to just repeat partially what I spoke to at the first two hearings. And maybe speaking a little bit more detail on it, but I am in strong support of compactness and continuity to the districts, not having districts look like fingers of a hand or some form of scientific amoeba or something of that nature, but nice, tight, compact districts. And I'll give you two examples in the city of Folsom. You have the neighborhood. Well, you have the neighborhood I live in, which is south of East Bidwell Street. It basically comprises the elementary schools of Sandra J. Gallardo, Goldbridge, and Natoma Station. It's a development that was started in 1990 and was completed in 2001 with some backfill development going through 2019. But the social economic of that neighborhood is what I would say is your typical suburban middle class neighborhood. 2 parents, 2 incomes, a number of children. We have a number of apartment complexes. So that's one neighborhood that I mean, neighborhoods are where our home is, and not just literally, but figuratively. It's where our kids grow up. It's where we bring our kids home from the hospital. It's where the kids meet their friends. It's where the parents meet the neighbors. It's neighbor like Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, sporting clubs are frequently based on neighborhood areas. And to divide those neighborhoods, I think does a disservice to the neighborhoods. So that's one neighborhood I would highlight. The second neighborhood I would highlight is the Central Business District, or the Central District, I guess it's called, and the Historic District in Folsom. And, in that instance, you're probably a little bit lower in socioeconomic class, maybe in some areas. But what's telling about both of those neighborhoods is that very rarely do any elected officials come from either of those neighborhoods. It's exceedingly rare. I can tell you that in my neighborhood, no one from the Folsom City Council has ever been elected, even though it represents maybe 35% of the population of the city of Folsom. And I can't think of any, at least recently, anybody who's been elected in the Central Business District or the Historic District either. And that goes for the school board or the city council. Most of the folks that are elected in the city of Folsom are from the north and the east. So, I would like to, but they deserve to have a compact neighborhood as well. Because these neighborhoods are again where our communities of interest are. And I think it would be a shame to be dividing these neighborhoods up and potentially disenfranchising large percentage of population of individuals who are probably, to a large part, busy working and supporting their families. And given the at-large districts, don't have the bandwidth to run district-wide. But having a compact district that represents their neighborhood would hopefully enhance the ability for people in these neighborhoods who've never been represented to be represented. And the same thing goes for Rancho Cordova. I mean, I think there's a definite distinction between the neighborhoods north of 50 and south of 50 in Rancho Cordova. And they deserve to have a dedicated elected official. So Again, I would just strongly advocate for compactness and keeping neighborhoods together, not splitting them up. Those are my comments tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Any other comments from the board? I can't see you, so just chime in.
Okay, I can go. Just kind of go along with Mr. Rafferty's comments. You just look at the map of south of 50 and the future development. I know we have that down there. Being cautious and, the 9th district might be it. But however, contrary to what he was saying, there could be a different effect because there's a short of housing that is in California. We're under an emergency situation for short of housing. And right now, we're considered housing as essential to our infrastructure during the pandemic, and they can't build houses fast enough. So we might see, we got to proceed with caution on the south of 50. We need to look at our facility plans that Matt does together, maybe really look close at the projections, and also confirm with each city and counties of what are the trends on permitting, and maybe get a better data on those trends, because yeah, we are in a pandemic, but we're also in a shortage of housing, and we're still moving forward with housing. So that population may be more than 10%, what Mr. Rafferty reports, but it may not be 100%. So it's got to be somewhere in between there. So I think we need to really focus on the future growth, because it is all south of 50, kind of bifurcates the whole map if you look at them. And his suggestion was to, do the compactness, and then maybe later, spread it over Folsom and Rancho Cordova areas on those larger areas. So those are areas I think that we need to gather more data that's not presented here. So hopefully maybe staff can able to help with our map makers so that we can get that data in there and have some more information, geographical information.
Thank you. Mr. Hoover?
Not really a lot of comments tonight, but I would echo my colleague, Mr. Reed, and just emphasize again that as the presenter shared, we're going to have to do this all again for the next election cycle as well. So right now we're operating on 10-year-old data, but that's what we have to base it on for now. And then in another 2 years, I'm sure we will address this again. So.
All right, Ms. Ranking?
No comment. Thank you.
All right, I'll take it back out to the public if there's any other comments. None being heard. I'll go ahead and close this public hearing. We'll move on to discussion action item. Adopt resolution number 4232035, specifics of the Board of Education or Board election order and consolidation with the November 3rd, 2020 general election. Superintendent Collegian?
Yes, there are 2 elected positions with terms expiring on December 1st, 2020 for incumbents Christopher Clark and Joanne Ranking. The attached resolution covers the following items: specification and date and purpose of the election, the candidate's statement, the number of wards and costs, the method of breaking a tie vote, and the consolidation with the statewide general election. And this information must be received by the Registrar of Voters and County Superintendent no later than June 3rd, 2020.
All right. Any comments from the board? Any questions from the board?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Short, second by Mr. Hoover. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Park?
Aye.
Board Member Short?
Aye.
Board Member Reed?
Aye.
Board Member Hoover?
Aye.
Board Member Ranking?
Aye.
And Student Member Nisnik?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Where are we at now? Let's see. Well, it looks like we're at item 12B. Adopt resolution number 4232036 concerning authorization and direction of certified service to be reduced for the coming 2020-2021 school year due to reduction or elimination of particular kinds of service. Superintendent Collegian?
Yes, at our February 13th, 2020 meeting, the governing board was presented with a recommendation from the superintendent to reduce certificated particular kinds of services for the 2021 school year. And the board approved resolution 02-13-2027 as presented. Based on that resolution, an initial notice was hand-delivered on March 6, 2020. The notice employee had the right to request a hearing to determine if there was cause to not reemploy them for 2021, and no hearing was requested. So the district acted within its authority and lawful discretion in the manner in which it has implemented the reduction of particular kinds of services.
All right, it's pretty cut and dry. Any comments from the board? Hearing none, and remember, I can't see you guys, so so hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
Second then.
Moved by Ms. Ranking, second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Park.
Aye.
Board Member Short.
Aye.
Board Member Reed.
Aye.
Board Member Hoover.
Aye.
Board Member Ranking.
Aye.
And Student Board Member Nisnik.
Hi.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item 12C, approved biannual developer fee justification study. Superintendent Collegian?
Yes. Our Ed Code 17620 gives our school districts the authority to assess fees for new development within the boundaries of their districts for the purpose of funding construction and reconstruction of the school facilities. Mr. Matt Washburn is here to give a little bit more background, so I'm going to call on Mr. Washburn just to talk a little bit more about the background of this item.
Good evening, thank you. Yes, this is the developer fee justification study that is for the level 1 fee, residential fee. It rejustifies the level 1 fee. As you recall, we collect a level 2 fee as justified by the school facility need analysis, which is a later item. So this rejustifies the level 1 fee, but it also increases and justifies the commercial industrial fee. The fees have to be, the fee study identifies several different purposes. It looks at the projected estimated build-out numbers. It examines student yield rates, capacity, projected number of students from residential development, the cost to provide housing for those students, anticipated revenue, and it looks at the shortfall between new housing and the anticipated revenue, and then a fee is calculated based on that. This developer fee justification study is basically a nexus that allows us to collect, to further move and adopt resolutions to collect it. This is a justification to collect those fees. And the only real fee that we would be increasing is the commercial fee, although it rejustifies and increases the residential fee.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Short?
As I was talking about our boundaries, on page 10, Matt, just a question for you. You can see that there was a downturn, but now based on the development fees and permitting, there's a slight rise. Is that correct? Am I reading that correct? That's why this is spanned over a 4-year period, but you're saying that there's a slight rise. How much of a rise can you put that in a simple terms?
Well, we're seeing a steady increase. We had a lot of build out after the recession in Folsom, a lot of infill. We probably had 1,100 or so units of infill, of which they're steadily probably, I would say 200 to 300, at least more. Well, probably those will be done within 3 years, I would project. And then number of units south of Highway 50, that has been changing, but currently we are looking at Folsom probably having a couple thousand units within this next year or two. So, and then we're looking at additional units throughout the other parts of Ranch Cordova starting in the next year or so.
That's exactly what my comments were. Thank you. I just want the board to understand this growth because of the housing shortage. So we're seeing an uptick, plus interest rates are low. So we're seeing an opposite effect of what most people think during this pandemic and downturn in the economy.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Any other comments from the board?
I just want to thank staff for answering some questions I sent you, and I think these are reasonable, and we'll be supporting them today.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'll move it.
Moved by Ms. Ranking.
Second.
Second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Short,
Aye.
Board Member Reed,
Aye.
Board Member Hoover,
Aye.
Board Member Rankin,
Aye.
and Student Board Member Nisnik.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Yes,
Welcome.
thank you, Matt. All right, we're gonna close open session and go into open public hearing. Item 13A, authorization of statutory school facility fees for government code section 65995 and education code section 17620, authorization of immediate implementation of statutory school facility fees. Superintendent?
No comments?
This hearing allows the public to comment on the revisions to the study and its premise that there is a correlation or nexus between new developments in Rancho Cordova and Folsom and the need for new construction, including the addition of relocatable classrooms at existing school sites.
We'll open it up for public comment. Anyone from the public?
I don't see anybody, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? Hearing none, I will close this public hearing. Open up the open session again. We'll go into item 14, discussion action item. Adopt resolution 4/23/2037, increase statutory school facility fee per government code section 65995. Superintendent Collegian.
Yes, now that the board's convened their public hearing, allowing the public to comment on the increase of level 1 fees. These fees were justified by the Board of Ed. Now the Board of Ed's approval of the biannual developer fee study at its meeting shows that this action would allow the board to levy the increase in fees to assist with the cost of new construction and modernization.
Right, it's pretty straightforward.
I'll move it.
Thank you. Moved by Ms. Ranking.
Second.
Second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Short.
Aye.
Board Member Reed.
Aye.
Board Member Hoover.
Aye.
Board Member Ranking.
Aye.
And Student Member Nisnik.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, looks like we're at item 14C. Approve a school facility needs analysis. Superintendent?
Yes, this resolution would give us the information.
Wait,
I'm sorry, we missed resolution
14B.
423/2038.
Oh, 14B. Let's go back up. Sorry. 14B, adopt urgency resolution number 04232038. Immediately implement the statutory school facility fee per ed code 17620. Superintendent?
Yes, this urgency resolution would allow us now to approve the levying of the school facility fees to address school construction and modernization costs as fiscally necessary.
Any questions from the board?
I will move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Hoover, second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Short. I'm sorry, Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Short.
Aye.
Board Member Reed.
Aye.
Board Member Hoover.
Aye.
Board Member Ranking.
Aye.
And Student Member Nisnik.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Drop back down to item 14C, approve the school facility needs analysis. Any questions from the board on that?
No.
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Ranking, second by Mr. Short. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Clark,
Aye.
Board Member Short,
Aye.
Board Member Reed,
Aye.
Board Member Hoover,
Aye.
Board Member Ranking,
Aye.
and Student Member Niesning.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, here we go again. We will close our open session, open our public hearing. Item 15A, public hearing authorization of alternative section 65995.5 school facilities fee and provisional approval of alternative section 65995.7 school facility fees. Superintendent.
Yes, this hearing allows the public to comment on the school facility needs analysis and its premise that levying fees, also known as level 2 fees, to offset the cost of housing students generated by new residential development is justified.
All right. Any comments from the public?
No
Hearing
comments.
none. Hearing none. Any comments from the board? Hearing none. We will close this public hearing. We'll open up our open session again. We're down to item 16, discussion action item. Adopt resolution 04232039, establish alternative section 65995.5 fee and alternative section 65995.7. Superintendent.
Yes, this resolution follows up on the public hearing and allows the board to levy the fees as noted in the public hearing.
All right, any comments or questions from the board?
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Short, second by Ms. Ranking. Superintendent, call roll, please.
Yes, Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Short.
Aye.
Board Member Reed.
Aye.
Board Member Hoover.
Aye.
Board Member Ranking.
Aye.
And Student Member Niesning.
Aye.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Before we go to reports of the Board of Education, I believe that we do have someone who wanted to make a public comment. I don't want to rob them of this, being that this is our first virtual meeting, and we're kind of well, we're doing good on this, but I just want to give the opportunity for the public to have any additional comments. I don't know if Ms. Pryor is on. Is she in?
She is not.
Right, thank you. All right, with that being said, we'll go to reports to the Board of Education. Superintendent?
Yes, I want to thank our SEL team, our social emotional well-being team, because they have responded to the board's request to put up a link on the front of our webpage for wellness resources. And these are resources to help with the mental health and well-being of students and staff and families, especially in this time of, different way of operating and just living day to day, as well as learning how to do school in a different manner. So I want to thank our team for putting that information up on our website. I also want to extend a thank you again to our employees, to our classified employees. They have been incredible since we have started school closures, starting with our food service team, our ETIS team, fiscal, HR, payroll, business, custodial, maintenance, operations. And they've just done a phenomenal job with the essential functions that need to keep going, make sure our students are fed, our schools are cleaned, and Chromebooks have been distributed. And a big shout out to our teachers this is our third week of distance learning, and our teachers are doing an incredible job. We're bringing our instructional assistants online in the next week. So we appreciate them and our site leadership, counselors, and all their support. And I do want to thank our student board member, Scarlett Nisnick, for helping us put together a survey that has been distributed to all senior students regarding student voice on graduation ceremony. So we'll have more information about that we can report out at our next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ranking.
Hi. I just wanted to thank Team Martha and Team Kelly and everyone who helped pull this together this evening. I think it went rather smoothly. And thank you to staff and all our teachers out there who are working so hard during this unprecedented time. I did want to ask the superintendent if we could agendicize a report out on what we are discussing in preparation for fall school, and if we have any plans for any summer intervention, even if it's online opportunities for our students. I watched another board meeting last night, and they were discussing some of the options that are being considered for fall if since schools are it appears that schools are not going to open in the fashion that we are used to. So I thought it might be a good time to start a discussion with the board too, please.
Yes, we can. I'll add that to the next agenda on May 7th.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Hoover.
No report.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I don't know if I like looking at myself. All right. Yeah, just a couple things. I think I've been hearing from parents, and it's been fairly consistent on 3 issues. And I know, we're doing our best in this very difficult time. No one ever anticipated this, imagined this, and certainly didn't plan for this, associated with the pandemic and social isolation or social distancing and all that. But what I do see a trend of 3 items that parents and to a certain degree students, but I'd say mostly parents I've been hearing from are concerned about. One is regarding distance learning and consistency of the distance learning from teacher to teacher. And I know there's going to be some difference, but I have heard some concerns raised by parents that they're having difficulty getting their kids on a specific schedule, if you will, and long for some form of normalcy, even in the weird conditions that we're operating under, where the students would be expected, depending on what period they're in, that at least one day a week that they call in and engage with their other classmates. One parent even went so far as saying that the students need that social interaction, and not, for the students, they say goodbye to their friends on March 13th, thinking, well, maybe they'll be back, by Easter, and yet now we're not going to be back at all, and the students are hurting, and at least some of the students, I guess I should say, are hurting. So I think if there's a way to create some form of structure, I think we all appreciate structure to a certain degree, maybe some more than other, but even the ones who perhaps aren't a fan of structure, they crave it though. So if there's anything we could do in that, I would encourage it. What I've been telling the parents is it's a work in progress. I mean, we're tweaking all the time. Again, this wasn't something we planned for, and I think if we could find ways to improve the process, even if it's for the final 5 weeks, I would encourage that. Another topic that's been coming up a lot is grading and where we are on grading, and so I think parents are very concerned about that and would like to know sooner rather than later what the grading situation is. And then finally, at least as it relates to the senior class graduation, and to a certain degree, I would say maybe 8th grade advancement, maybe 5th grade advancement, but primarily the 12th graders. I just, to the degree we can, and I know we have to take direction from the governor and the county board of health and the like, but to the degree we can think outside the box and find some way we can do some form of physical graduation, even if it looks different, where the student can cross the stage, get their diploma, smile for the camera. I think that would go a long way in for the senior class. I would I guess I would like to try to avoid an all virtual graduation if we can. If we can't, all right, I understand. But anyway, those are the three things that I've been hearing a lot of. So I just wanted to share it with the board and staff. But congratulations to the staff and to the board, or excuse me, the superintendent and the staff on the development of this this Zoom thing. This is the first week that I've used Zoom. My employer uses a different platform, so this is it's interesting learning the different platforms that you can do interaction on. So anyway, everybody be safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll be finished with this soon.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Short.
Can you hear me? Okay. I do want to thank staff for over these last few weeks, be able to be creative, endure these changes, and everybody involved. It took a team. I mean, there's a lot of tough times. Everybody's doing a lot of things that they haven't done before. It's coming together, and so I'm really very, very, very proud of this district. It's a great district. Like you said, we're very blessed to have the staff we have and the people all working together towards common goals. So my hat's off to everybody. We just have to recognize over and over, we're going to get through this pandemic. On the distance learning, I want to say thank you again for doing such a good job putting together. I know we haven't really were set up for it, but we put this together. It is, like David said, a work in progress. I like to see in the future, when we have time, do a presentation by staff, lessons learned, best practices, the things that we learn, because I know not everything's going perfectly, and I don't expect that. But continuous improvement philosophies definitely should be things. But I would like to see the feedback, if we get the time, to do a presentation, stories, if you would, from different teachers and staff of how this is all working, and even the students' feedback. So maybe our student board member here can provide that during her presentation on that. Maybe she can go out to the student body and ask them. I know this is might be the new norm for a while. We're hearing from the governor, but we're going to get through it. So, as you know, it's going to be scientifically based. Assemblies are going to be far few in between, and hopefully we could do what David said, have a different type of graduation. But to be realistic and be honest with everybody, I am hearing what the governor's saying. Based on what I'm hearing, that may not happen. But again, it's always have some hope. Maybe we can figure out some type of way to do that. But we do have to. The other thing I want to see in the future for the board is lessons learned. This preparing for the future pandemic. They're talking about second waves or other situations. This might not be over. We just don't know a lot about this virus. But how do we prepare for a fallback? I know that sounds negative, but like I said, we need to prepare. What do we do in the fall if something happens? Again, prepare, because we're in the tunnel. We see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we could have a relapse. Just don't know. But it could totally disappear. We just don't know. So I think we should prepare and talk about those scenarios and plan for them. Again, the grading situation that Dave was talking about. My daughters, they wish they didn't have grading, but the colleges were already set up for distance learning. They just flipped a switch, and a few days later, they were all doing distance learning about a week later. We didn't have that luxury, so we lost a little time there. So hopefully we can figure all this together collectively, what's the best for all kids in California and by region in every school district. And I want to make sure everybody stays safe. And I think this Zoom thing is great. I mean, I was not working at noon today. My computer didn't work. Everything didn't work. And I ran over here and I ran to my daughter and said, "Can you help me?" And she set it all up in 10 minutes, because that's what they do. They use Zoom for distance learning at the college though. So yeah, better treat your young people good, because they're the ones that know all this technology better than all of us. So I want to thank again for a good meeting, virtual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. In closing, I just want to say, this is the new norm. These Zoom meetings, and I want to thank Kelly and Martha for putting this together and making sure that we had everything in place and having the agenda there, and so people can watch it. So, you know, this is going to be happening for a while. But hey, this is something that we'll get used to. Um, Student board member, Scarlett, I want to thank you for your work and basically thinking outside the box with this virtual talent show. I'm still in. If you still need me for a judge, I'm there. I'll do it. So keep us apprised of what's going on, because I think this is going to be really, really interesting. My teachers, I just want to thank you guys for your hard work on this distance learning thing. I know it may be a challenge for you, especially if you have, more than one student in one household. Other teachers got to chime in, and I'm hoping that the Chromebooks were handed out and those families have the access to those Chromebooks so they can continue their learning. As far as the grading, I agree with Mr. Reed, and I want it to be fair. I want it to be fair to the students. I want the students to have an opportunity given the opportunity so they're not robbed. So they're not robbed of their future education. So I'm hoping that we can work on something and put something in place that's going to make everybody happy. So I know more discussions are coming up on that. The district-wide election conversations and the public hearing, here we are. This is the third meeting out of 6. Soon we'll be visiting the mapping, and I encourage the community to come out. I encourage the community to voice their opinion. This is what it's all about. This is having the community be active in the democratic process. So I'm looking forward to the mapping, see how that works out. And last but not least, I want to touch on the graduation. And I'll go on record right now. I'll tell you, I am not a big fan of the virtual graduation. And we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know if the governor is going to lift restrictions or how that's going to be. But, hopefully we'll get together. I know the superintendent is developing a team. I know that myself and other members of the board would like to have a parent representative from each high school on that committee to make some decisions. These kids, they've worked hard for 4 years, and just to say, oh, well, here's your diploma, that's it, see ya, it's not working for me. I don't think it's working for the board either. So as we move forward with this, let's see if we can put some ideas together. Let's see if maybe we hope that maybe in late May, mid-June, that there's an opportunity to at least modify that graduation scheme and see how that looks, because I know these students didn't ask for this, nor do they deserve this. They deserve to be recognized. So with that being said, you guys stay safe. Please practice your social distancing. We'll get through this together. Meeting adjourned.